Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be checking out every single Warhammer 40k Faction Explained Part 2 by Bricky. Obviously this was another recommendation to me by you guys, and I gotta say real quick again, big thank you for the support that I've been seeing on this channel the last few days. It actually means the world to me. You guys have been blowing this channel up. The likes have been through the roof, the support has been through the roof. And I gotta say, it's such a big motivator for me to make more content for you guys. And I love reading all the comments. I have to say that too. The comments blow me away. You know, you guys are so willing to explain everything. And, you know, it's amazing how patient you guys are with me, and that you're willing to, you know, watch along and experience this with me. So I really, really appreciate that so much. And also, we got people from all over the world watching this channel now. And I just never thought... I never thought the channel would honestly grow this big, and especially such a short amount of time. So it's fucking fantastic to see you guys are blowing it away. And once again, thank you so much for that. Now, I just want to stay tuned. While I am enjoying the Warhammer, it is also not going to be the only content I'm making. You know, I like to keep a little bit of variety with things, and I'm interested in all different types of topics. So while you guys are recommending the hell out of this, and they are coming, make no mistake, after this, boys, I'm thinking it's going to be Helsreach, because since you guys have been recommending that to me, I looked it up, I saw the thumbnail, and I was fucking, it looks sweet, okay? So that is coming. Do not fret about that. There is going to be more Warhammer content coming, but it's not going to be the only topic, I should say, that I'm going to be uploading on the channel. So I just want to make that known. If it's not for you guys, you know, feel free, tune in to the next one. That's absolutely okay. No hard feelings there, okay, boys and girls? And girls, I do see you too. I've been corrected, okay? So I see you, all right? But without any further delay, guys, let's get right into this, all right? So part 2, I'm guessing, well, not guessing, he said so, didn't he? He said it was all about the aliens, right? Part 1's about the Imperium and all the sub-factions underlying, and part 2 is going to be about the alien factions. So, as always, got a pen and paper here. If you see me writing, please don't get upset. I'm doing it for my knowledge and my knowledge retention, I guess. So yeah, without any further delay, let's get right into it.
Hey all, this is part 2 in a 2-part series
Awesome.
on the Warhammer races. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, we do the Imperium of Man. You can check that out in the description, and I would highly recommend you watch that to get context for this episode.
Great video, by the way.
Go ahead and keep on watching. So after an entire episode of nothing but humans, we can now talk about chaos, which involves humans again, but a little bit less. We also got demons and shit.
Oh my.
I just felt someone grab my ass.
Chaos demons. What the hell?
So, as I've mentioned many times before, we've discussed the warp, the immaterium, the hellish landscape, the purgatory dimension realm between the material realm of our existence. Now, in the warp, it's terrifying, horrible. There are demons everywhere. Things are crazy. All your minds and thoughts and emotions get projected there. It is both formless and empty. It is vast and tiny. It obeys the laws of time and physics while simultaneously does absolutely nothing of the sort. It is a hodgepodge and a culmination of just unknowable.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but the warp is essentially like, I'm not saying it's like a MacGuffin of types, but or of sorts, I suppose, but it's basically a realm where like everything is possible in a sense. There's no such thing as like a I guess there's no such thing as like a for sure in the warp. You know what I'm saying? There's no guarantees in the warp. Anything that can happen will, and anything that will can, kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? Maybe that's the wrong take on it, but that's just the feeling I'm getting from it.
Of the sort is a hodgepodge and a culmination of just unknowable, eldritch, horrifying shit. And there are 4 gods that permeate
4 gods
in chaos and the warp. These are the 4 major chaos gods. And if we wish to learn about chaos, we need to learn about each and every single one of these chaos gods. First up, we have Khorne, and he is the easiest. Khorne is your classic Satan. He is all about anger, murder, fighting, blood, guts, death. You ever heard the term blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne? That's Khorne.
Blood for the blood god, that's what I'm writing down.
He is all about the fury and strength of battle. He doesn't care where blood comes from, so long as blood is flowing. He wants to fight and murder and carnage and slaughter and death.
Also, real quick, I'm turning on captions for you guys. That's my bad. Also, link to his video and his channel will be in the description below. Go check that out if you haven't already. I forgot to mention that. Again, that's my bad. That's my bad. I'm trying to get better at it.
He wants to fight and murder and carnage and slaughter and death, 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 death. That is Khorne. Very simple to understand. Next up, you have Tzeentch, and Tzeentch is the god of change.
Tzeentch.
However, the god of change.
That's a crazy spelling for that
permeates
name.
in so many different other ways. He's the most eldritch.
It's gonna fuck me up all the time.
Demon gods. He has this weird way to always be plucking at the strings of the universe. He's always conniving and scheming and doing his best to cause as much little bullshit as he can. Tzeentch is unknowable. Everything that makes sense, he will and won't do. Every future and setting and every type of destiny or fate is all foretold and also changeable. It is set in stone while also completely random. He knows what everything is going to happen and also that none of it's going to happen. You would ask Tzeentch a question.
So before he goes on, a lot of you guys were saying that Horus, he was manipulated in a sense to see basically visions of the Emperor ascending to deityhood in a sense, and that in a sense it's like a half-truth because he was shown what eventually did happen, but not how it came to be, and he obviously was the cause of why the Emperor eventually did ascend to deityhood in a sense. Even against his wishes, right? So was it him? Was it this chaos god that actually like influenced him, or was he given that like vision of that future from something else or on his own? Because it sounds a lot like it would be this guy, Tzeentch.
And also that none of it's going to happen. You would ask Tzeentch a question. That question leads to 3 more questions. And those questions lead to the heat death of the universe, which asks 4 answers to those questions. And then he thinks to himself, what are questions even really? And are you even asking the questions? Or are you simply giving paths to answers and other horseshit? Tzeentch is just, I'm gonna fuck with stuff. He is yes and he is no. He is the understanding and he is complexity. He is unknowable. And that's what the god of change is about. Very bizarre. And he likes birds.
So he's the god of change.
I don't know why. Next up, we got Papa Nurgle. Papa Nurgle, he loves you for who you are. Probably not. He will murder you just the same. But Papa Nurgle is about rot, pestilence, death, and decay. He is the end of everything. Him and Tzeentch do not like each other very much because where Tzeentch represents change and adjustment.
So they don't like each other very much. Is it? So I guess these chaos gods aren't necessarily on the same side, like at all, in a sense, right? Like because they each represent different things. Is kind of what I'm getting from it. Like they each represent their own like subcult, I guess. You know. So I guess they would, do they often come into conflict with one another, even though they're not fighting for the same thing, but they're fighting. I guess they would just be straight up fighting against each other all the time, wouldn't they? Yeah, they really have no common goals. They're chaos gods. Okay.
Him and Tzeentch do not like each other very much because where Tzeentch represents change and adjustment, Nurgle represents stagnation and death. He is all about miasma and pestilence and large bloat and pus and organs and people just being sedentary, sloth. He is the idea that everything will rot and decay and die. Nothing is certain besides decay and death. All of us will end up the same way and broken down through just sheer never-ending decomposition.
That's crazy.
So the joke that Nurgle always loves you is generally because of that, because we all end up the same. We all rot and we all die and wither. That's Nurgle, and he's got a general theme of course, pestilence and different kinds of diseases and sickness and things of that nature. That's generally Nurgle. He's pretty easy to understand as well, and he chunk. Finally, we have the youngest of the Chaos Gods, and that is Slaanesh, also known as the Prince of Pleasure or the God of Unspeakable Excess. Slaanesh is generally referred to with sex, but it's not only sex, it's just that's a good avenue if you want to make stuff.
So one of you guys in the comments basically described it to me as Slaanesh came to be, basically by like murder fucking enough people. in essence, which I thought was a fucking hilarious way of putting it. Yeah, so she was birthed by the Eldar, correct? That's right, yeah? Because they basically just went like way too fucking far with like their nonsense and debauchery, you know? So I thought that was a fucking hilarious way to hear about it.
With sex. But it's not only sex, it's just that's a good avenue if you want to make stuff. Slanesh is just the idea of the senses of the body being cranked to not just 11, but more like 17. See, we'll discuss Slanesh a little bit more when we talk about the Eldar, because they done fucked up. But it or whatever is mainly about just the excess of emotions, and therefore sex is generally a large part of it. However, it's mostly pain and torture, lots of pain, torture, but sometimes sexually related or drug related. Lots of drugs. Slanesh gets off on everything. Extremes in happiness, extremes in sadness, extremes in pain and sadism and masochism. And of course that goes along with the sex part of it as well. It's generally referred to with sex because of the color scheme, very purple, lots of exposed genitalia. A lot of their models have like exposed nipples and stuff. And that is generally the theme you go for from a physical side, but it really embodies everything. Mainly pain and also the excessive amounts of emotion. So when it comes down to it, you'll find a lot of them have things like spikes or whips or any kind of BDSM style gear. Because it is
these guys look like they have a lot of like shit like protruding from them in all sorts of fashion. And like, you know, a lot of like the clothing I have seen has been either very suggestive or very form-fitting, let's say.
Or whips, or any kind of BDSM style gear, because it is unspeakable excess. The prince of pleasure. Everything in excess to the point where it is just sheer frightening. That is Slanesh in a nutshell. A little bit bizarre and a little hard to describe sometimes, but as we talk more about the Dark Eldar later in the video, you'll understand it far, far better, and far more than you'd want to. Now you might be thinking, why would anyone ever want to join Chaos? They all look horrifying, screwed up, and just frightening things, right?
Like,
Well, the thing is that, of course, one, your mind is put into the warp and the Immaterium, so you can be easily swayed by chaos demons when they get into your head, especially if you're a psyker. Sometimes regiments of the less mentally...
So basically it comes down to, like, in a sense, like mental fortitude of the person or the psyker that is accessing the warp. But I guess, like, once a demon is out and it's not bound to that warp anymore, then that's where the danger comes, that it can possess people that aren't accessing the warp as well. I think that's my understanding of it. That could be incorrect. That's a very interesting concept.
Get into your head, especially if you're a psyker. Sometimes regiments of the less mentally strong people, whether they be civilians or say low-level guardsmen or conscripts, can be easily swayed by this and become chaos cultists and stuff, and they serve their dark gods and whatever god they personally prefer. However, and this might seem strange, chaos in their own right isn't necessarily evil. See, the warp is every manifestation of emotion and being, every soul, everything of existence. This includes all the good things. All the different chaos gods have another side to their coin. Khorne might be death, murder, slaughter, slaughter, but he's also got this weird sense of survival of the fittest, trial by combat, and honor. Khorne will never lie to you. Khorne will never stab you in the back. Khorne isn't about conniving and scheming. Khorne is about straight up mano-y-mano, you versus me, get in the ring, we're gonna murder each other hard right now. It may not be a good thing at the end of the day, but it is that other side of...
So, and the way it was explained to me too by you guys was that essentially, because the warp essentially was not necessarily a bad place. There, as he says, there's an opposite side to that coin where it's not just evil, there's also good as well, right? So, but it's basically the case of that over so many thousands of years, so much bad shit has happened that these excesses of emotion and feeling and the souls that feel that way strive so heavily to these sides because of just how bad everything has fucking gotten. The fact that the universe is constantly at war, there's constant suffering, it allows for chaos gods such as these to take hold, I think, right? Maybe that's also a wrong way of like thinking about it, but I think the warp wasn't necessarily bad. That's correct. I'm pretty sure that's correct.
Murder each other hard right now. It may not be a good thing at the end of the day, but it is that other side of the coin. Him and Zeech generally don't get along because Zeech is that conniving schemer, but he's also about the idea of hope. Where there is change, there is change for your predicament. There is change for your problem. The hope of the galaxy, the ability to bend the world to your will, the idea that your fate is not set in stone, but in reality that you control your own destiny and can control it whenever you want, the changer of ways. That is Zeech. And of course, Zeech and Nurgle hate each other because while Nurgle does represent stagnation, death, and decay, he also represents finality and ending. The fact that you can be mentally at peace knowing that you will end and how you will end. Fear of the unknown, fear of change is not present with Nurgle.
He's doing a very, very good job of explaining this too, like that opposite side of that coin. That's a very, very interesting take on it because yeah, you can't have all these things without the other as well. So it's very cool that these chaos gods, even though they are chaos gods, still represent something good, but mostly bad. You know what I'm saying? I think that's a very interesting concept, like duality.
Fear of the unknown, fear of change is not present with Nurgle. With Nurgle, everything will rot and die, and that provides that finality, that ability that this is over. We are all the same, and we will all end the same. We know the meaning of life. The meaning of life is to live and die and rot. And with that, it brings peace of mind. Slaanesh is a lot more simple. While they are the excess of emotion, they are also the representation of emotion.
Right.
Slaanesh embodies happiness. Slaanesh embodies excitement and joy and pleasure, not only in the sense of the physical, you know, bam style of pleasure, but also everything else like food and drink and air on your cheek and sunlight, the feeling, emotion and feeling. All of that is also represented with Slaanesh. So you have to ask, why are they always represented as super evil skulls and spikes on everything and want to murder everybody? I don't really got an answer for you on that one. My assumption is that because mentally humans may think worse thoughts even if we don't act on them, and therefore they're projected in the warp more. That one's a little bit weird. I don't know. This is me spitballing right now, but I don't know. You need a
My take on that would be is this is like essentially the physical manifestation of hell. Even though religion at this point has been wiped away, the fundamental idea of what is hell, it's fire and brimstone, you know what I'm saying? It's horn devils and fucking, it's people being tortured, death everywhere, decay, I feel like just that general representation, because I'm assuming it's not just humans that think that way, that projected by so many trillions potentially of entities, people, right, could have that profound effect on the warp. I think that's an interesting concept, because they're just images of what we think. Like, isn't that really what a god is? And that's also like another comment that I touched on too before, or replied to. It reminded me kind of like Clash of the Titans in a sense, where it's like these gods only exist due to the fact that people believe in them, people worship them, the fact that people like that's where they get their power from. That's how they're able to draw these godlike powers. And without that, they're mortal men, they turn to stone. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, in the case of the chaos demons and gods, I don't think that happens. I think if you don't believe in them, I think they're still very much there. They're just not as powerful. I think. I could be wrong. I'm sure a chaos god in this universe is probably not killable. Or if they are, it's like, what the fuck, Like, some bad shit's about to go down if one of them dies. Maybe good shit, but probably bad shit.
A little bit weird. I don't know. This is me spitballing right now, but I don't know. You need a super bad guy. You already got the Imperium of Man. You need somebody to be a little bit worse than them. So you got
right.
Honestly, who cares? I just want to buy like a bird magician. Look at him. So cool. So combining all this together on the tabletop, Chaos Demons are generally very melee-based. They run in, go really hard. You have lots of summoning and conjuring, tons of spells. Generally a little bit frail, but they have special saves to make them a little bit stronger. You've got giant demons and smaller demons. You got hordes of little boys and tons of big guys. Demons are as they seem. demons. Nurgle is slow. Khorne is super scary in melee.
They do look super fun though on the tabletop, I will say.
And spellcasting, and then Slanesh, who is all melee, really fast but squishy, but in lots of hordes of tons of melee and pain damage, of course. So overall, the demons are a huge part of 40k and a massive threat to almost every single faction, with the exception of a couple. However, the big part about demons is also transferred into the other 9 Primarchs we didn't talk about, which are the Chaos Space Marines.
Oh. So, I obviously know that, like, with the Horus Heresy, 9 of the 18 Primarchs obviously rebelled. Did they straight up just become, like chaos? Like straight up? I guess he's gonna explain, but that's I didn't realize that.
Which are the Chaos Space Marines.
I didn't know there were Chaos Space Marines.
So Horus and all of his boys, all of them in the Primarchs, they have all also become Chaos Boys, and they all have their own special Chaos Legions, specializing in so many different things, just like the Adeptus Astartes, the Angels of Death, the regular Space Marines. Chaos Space Marines aren't a whole lot different than the regular Space Marines. They have the same armor, generally the same training and toughness. They just specialize in different kinds of things. And also a lot of the Primarchs have ascended into greater is it greater demons? They're demon Primarchs at this point. Gigantic, horrifying man-demon hybrids that are pretty awesome, if I'm going to be honest. They look really cool.
That does look pretty sick.
And their associated legions that they are a part of are all kind of going out there and causing a large ruckus for everyone else. Considering the raw strength and firepower of a legion of Space Marines, imagine that entire legion just converting to chaos and immediately fighting you. It's generally pretty horrifying. There's a lot of them,
Sounds
so
like
I gotta
it.
write them down, but you've got the...
Like, I saw what the regular Space Marines were capable of doing in Astartes there, and I gotta say, like, having... I didn't realize that Chaos was capable of... Well, I mean, it makes sense, but I just didn't... I guess I didn't see, like, Space Marines in general, at least Chaos, keeping with that training, you know what I'm saying? But it makes sense that they did. There's no reason, if this Primarch turned sides, why his Legion wouldn't do the same, you know? Because I guess ultimately it's like they follow the Primarch because the Primarch is their father, even though the Emperor is the Primarch's father, you know what I'm saying? So it's just loyalty to who you trust and who you put your faith in, I guess.
It's generally pretty horrifying. There's a lot of them, so I gotta write them down. But you've got the Emperor's Children with Primarch Fulgrim, loyal to Slanesh. These people, they are some messed up people.
They look pretty fucked.
Overload, tons
that looks fucked.
Tons of torture. And I think Fulgrim is a demon Primarch right now, and oh god, I am terrified to see what that man looks like. At least on the tabletop, because the Emperor's Children are not good people. You've got the Iron Warriors, which are kind of like opposite of the Imperial Fists, with Primarch Perturabo, I believe is his name. They're Chaos Undivided. They just kind of serve chaos in a general aspect instead of choosing one of the 4. But the Iron Warriors are big on the siege and fortification, and they're basically entirely against the Imperial Fists and are a major rival. Perturabo, I believe, is also still alive, and I'm also very interested to see what he looks like, because Demon Primarchs are badass. You've got the Night Lords with Primarch Conrad Kurz. Conrad Kurz is dead, which is good because he's a sick fuck. But the Night Lords are generally about terrorizing people and terrorism. They're generally about fear, and broadly so. You've got the World Eaters with Primarch Angron, still alive, also excited to see. Angron, if you think you've known an angry person, Angron is the angriest son of a bitch.
Angron is such a telling name.
Removed
what the fuck?
Of his brain that didn't make him angry, so he could be angrier.
Fuck?
Angron, fucker's mad. You've got the Death Guard with Primarch Mortarion. They actually have their own special codex and their own major army on the tabletop. Mortarion himself is actually one of the models, and look at him. Look at him. It's so cool looking. Of course,
he looks pretty sick.
Based, obviously. So very slow, but very tanky. You've got the Word Bearers with Primarch Lorgar.
Can't imagine how long that would take to
paint. Still alive. I don't know what's up with him at the current moment, but the Word Bearers are generally the people who caused all the major problems in the beginning. At least I blame them for it. They're little assholes. You got the Black Legion with Primarch Horus. Get fucked, nerd. You've got the Alpha Legion with Primarch Alfarius Omegon. Chaos, I think. And then finally, you've got the Thousand Sons with Primarch Magnus the Nerd. The Thousand Sons also have their own book just with the Death Guard. Magnus is also a tabletop model. He looks super cool, as you can tell. And they're all super heavily psyker and
protruding horn nipples.
They look pretty neat. But overall, with all of these Chaos Space Marine factions, you can play as a lot of different ones, but the main ones that you can really work at are standard Space Marines, Chaos Space Marines, as well as the Death Guard and Thousand Sons, as they are the most fleshed out, especially on the tabletop at least. See this right here? This is a really good way to describe the Chaos Space Marines. What the thick-headed fools with their broken corpses
I love these quotes, by the
fail
way.
to understand is that not only can they never defeat us, but they cannot hide or flee or shield themselves from the triumph of chaos. They are finite and we are unbound, undivided. They must not err, or they shall fall to heresy. All who fall join our cause. Every imperial fool who dares to open his eyes is a willing recruit. They strive merely to hold back our fury and might, and it
That's a crazy statement.
them. Thus, you can see chaos is inevitable. We lurk not only beyond their grasp and at their gates, we lurk within the darkness of their souls, on the tip of their tongues, in their tortured dreams. We are them, but freed from the shackles of ignorance.
That's just it, isn't it?
Grown
shackles
strong,
of ignorance.
Evolved. We are them, but so much more. As hardcore as that quote is, the saddest part is they're mostly right.
Like, yeah.
Chaos is based.
I was gonna say that's like entirely true. Like the whole idea of literally open your eyes and just see the truth. You know, this is how it is. See it. Just look. Just once. That's all you need. Just one look. And then once you do, you're like, oh, but you're right. That's how it is. You know, and then you believe. Like religion it's one of those funky things, you know, where it's like it's something that people can be so diehard about, even though from the outside, right? Like if you're not brought up with a certain religion, you could look at it and you could think that's crazy. Why would someone ever do that? But if you're indoctrinated with it from birth, and like it is a physical entity in this world that acts on you, and that you're told you need to stalwartly stay firm against it, but it's showing you shit that like, well, the Emperor's not a fucking god, but I've been told he is for 6,000 years. You know what I mean? And even the Emperor didn't want to be seen as a god, you know, which is the crazy thing. But like, it's the doctrine that is being pushed upon the Imperium, I guess, you know. It's just a very interesting concept to me.
As that quote is, the saddest part is they're mostly right. Chaos is basically unkillable. You could probably get rid of Space Marines, a decent amount, the Chaos Space Marines that is, but every soul that dies goes to the warp. Every Chaos soul will end up back in the warp. And depending on how hard you killed them, they will come back at some point. Every demon you banish will return at some point. Chaos is unstoppable. The warp is unending. And while maybe there is at some point some way to stop them somehow, the resources to do so, the requirements to do so are so far beyond the reaches of man and the other races at the current moment.
Give it another 30,000 years and
maybe. It's just an unstoppable force that just keeps on coming and is just barely being slowed. Chaos is by far the biggest threat. They are without number. Their legions are everywhere, and yeah.
I like the blue armor, like the cyan colored armor.
I promise, we're done with humans now. Let's talk about some Xenos.
Eldar.
So let's talk about
the Eldar,
or also known as the Eldari, which are a super hyper specialized and very technologically advanced race of, well, elf people. They were as well responsible for the creation of Slaanesh, the newest demon god. How'd they do that? Debauchery on a world-ending scale. So back in the day, it was just Khorne, Tzeentch, and Nurgle. And the Eldar are very, very ancient, millions of years. These Eldar, however, have a bit of a sensory problem. You know, every kind of pain or feeling that you have is a little bit amplified compared to the normal. However, with Eldar, as their race advanced so excessively, and they became so self-reliant, and everything became so easy, there was no requirement for food production anymore, there was no shortages, everything was basically done. Everyone was so comfortable, and that comfort breeded this weird sedation, and that sedation breeded the requirement for more and more debauchery.
Debauchery!
So essentially, it's like the 7 deadly sins, you know? Like, it's like, what is it? Sloth, along with, like, I guess, like, envy in a sense, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's nothing left for them to do. They're in such a comfortable state. What do you do besides entertain yourself? And in this case, entertaining yourself, they fucking took that shit to the extreme, from my understanding. They absolutely went fucking batshit wild with it. Again, I really like that fucking comment. How that was described, murder fucking. I really enjoyed that fucking explanation. That was good. Whoever wrote that, fucking props to you.
More and more debauchery.
Debauchery!
Debauchery! Debauchery!
When everything you have can be so easily acquired, you will end up down this road of pure debauchery. All of the senses the Eldar had that were so powerful, things like feeling, happiness, sadness, and just evil and good, all needed to be satisfied and satiated. And the desire to satiate these senses grew more and more with worse and worse debauchery. It started off with things like sex and drugs becoming so much more rampant, because these are the first things you generally turn to when requirements for living are so easily accessible. It would get to the point that made Sander Cohen in BioShock look sane. All right, this is the kind of debauchery it led to. It was constantly...
Great game, by the way, BioShock. Fucking great franchise there. If you guys ever play the BioShock games, let me know what you think about them. I fucking love those games.
Look sane. All right, this is the kind of debauchery it led to. It was constantly satisfying and satiating these sexual and sadistic or masochistic
that looks crazy.
That only elevated and elevated, and this was
so they took human slaves
wide.
Or slavery in general.
Going down darker, more depraved, and more violent paths as time went on. However, some people didn't entirely take to that. Some of the Eldar were looking at this depraved species that they had become and said, no thanks for me, dog, I'm good. And they bailed. These are the Craft World Eldar. They left on these giant continent-sized starships called Craft Worlds. They believed in learning the old ways of the Eldar and pushing away from this depravity and debauchery.
Those ships are probably
back
massive.
to their main roots. And so they would segment themselves on these giant craft worlds far in the outer reaches of space. They even had this thing called the Webway. Remember what we mentioned about warp travel with the Imperium?
Right.
The Eldar is something way safer called a Webway.
Yeah.
The Eldar Webway is actually like a pocket dimension kind of thing. And in that pocket dimension, there were also more horrible, depraved groups and clans that would spend their time in there. And if you imagine the debauchery was bad already, these were debauchery X10. So all of this continued, and it bloated until Slaanesh just burst forth. All that emotion, all that mental, thought processes, I suppose, all of this in such a condensed space. Don't forget, this is all being shot, all their souls as well, into the warp. All of this depravity right into the warp.
So did that end their world when Slaanesh was born? Obviously, I'm guessing at this point the Eldar were a multiplanetary species, but was their like homeworld or a significant chunk of their empire, I guess, taken out when this happened? Because I'm guessing like any of the followers, like anybody who went too extreme with that debauchery, they probably were just fucking right back into the warp with her or Slaanesh, they were just like warped in with her to the warp. I guess Slaanesh isn't really a girl. Slaanesh is whatever the hell you want it to be, right? Like, there's not really, I guess like the Chaos Gods don't in general have a gender. The god is genderless, right? Maybe that's wrong, but Slaanesh could definitely appear as whatever the fuck you want it to be, because it's just the definition of like, you know, desire and want at the end of the day. So it's like, what is that to somebody? Well, it could be theoretically whatever you're into, right? You know, that's a very interesting concept.
Into the warp. All this depravity right into the warp. So what happened? Boom. Slaanesh was birthed and killed off 90% of the entire Eldar population.
Answers that
Untold
question.
Trillions.
Wow.
Trillions had their souls ripped from their bodies and their actual fleshy bodies devoured by Slaanesh demons. The entirety of the Eldar race was eaten alive and their souls consumed to the Prince
That's
of
fucking
Pleasure.
crazy. Yeah, like they were
All
just
of them
taken instantly.
Got fucked up. It was so
Sounds like
bad
it.
that it literally ripped a warp hole into the fabric of the materium called the Eye of Terror. That's literally
Really?
this like quasi horrifying gateway portal from the materium and the immaterium right next to Cadia,
Oh.
and it is horrifying. So this Slaanesh, also known as She Who Thirsts.
And I will say, I loved your guys' comments and explanations on Cadia. You guys didn't actually, you didn't go fully in depth in it, and I like that because you're giving me the opportunity to go check it out. It sounds super interesting, but I know that the planet fell before Cadia fell, is what a lot of you guys were saying to me. So that Eye of Terror being in such close proximity to Cadia, is that the reason why it fell? I'm guessing. Because like that chaos portal was right there, you know. Let's keep watching.
And it is horrifying. So this Slaanesh, also known as She Who Thirsts by the Eldar, slaughtered the entire population except for a couple. Those in the craft worlds were actually not affected by this as they were so far in the reaches of the galaxy. That crazy crack that birth of Slaanesh only affected the ones in the center. So these craft world Eldar were able to escape, but Slaanesh got their sights on them. Every time an Eldar will die, their soul doesn't just pass into the warp naturally. It goes straight to Slaanesh. Craft world or not. What about those people in the web?
Wow.
Well, imagine that giant birth happening, but
So that's kind of nuts. So like, no matter, even if you like, you lived your life pure, you know, at the end of the day, if you're an Eldar and you die, you're Slaanesh's. Like that's fucking radical. Like, so that is like a for sure. There is no way to get around that. It's like if you die, that's just it. So I'm assuming the Eldar must like live for fucking ever, right? Like do they reproduce through conventional means? I'm assuming so, right? But I'm just a little confused on like I guess their lifespan in general, right? Because it feels like 90% of their population being wiped out and then being but these craft worlds could also be like fucking huge. Like those ships looked gigantic. I'm assuming they probably at least in the tens of thousands, maybe the hundreds of thousands. It's hard to say, and obviously I don't know how many they made. So somebody let me know about that in the comments.
What about those people in the webway? Well, imagine that giant birth happening, but they were only able to just barely get a grasp onto you. Slaanesh was just barely able to hold on. These people are the Dark Eldar, or also known as the Drukhari. The Eldar population right now is so massively small. It is minuscule compared to any of the other most of the other populations in the universe. The Eldar are consistently having issues trying to get their population up because as their souls are constantly being hungered from Slaanesh, they realize their entire species is doomed.
Yeah.
And they understand it very well. Since the time of the fall, our race has been haunted by what we, in our reckless pursuit of hedonistic indulgence, gave birth to. Though our dreams once overturned worlds and quenched suns, we are now but fitful shadows clinging to the edge of existence. All the stars in the sky cannot blot out the hateful glare of the red moon's eye. The birthing place of the great enemy pulses with all the malice of a demon that is dreaming, casting its shadow over all we have ever done and all we ever shall. Every twisted strand of fate and casting of the runes leads me to this time, to this place, and it is clear that the final battle awaits me at the ancient Crone worlds, a conflict the likes of which has not been seen since the Monkai warred amongst themselves and their corpse of a seer fell to his traitorous son. Is coming, and all my steps lead towards it, no matter that I walk other paths. I see the stars stained red with the blood of the Monkai, and though their wars do not concern me, I would gladly let them destroy one another. I know that to avoid this fight is to condemn my race to inevitable doom, and though all I see is darkness, I know that I will not flinch from my destiny. And now let's talk about cute plastic models.
Bro, I'm straight up not having a good time.
These are the craft
playable
world
race
Eldar.
we have for the Eldar are the craft world Eldar and living in those craft world starships I mentioned earlier. And each of them have their own kind of craft world, almost like a Space Marine Legion. Each craft world is in itself its own special kind of group. And the Eldar themselves are very fast and rely a lot on trickery. They are squishy, a bit weak, but they're very in tune as psychers. Tons of psychers across the entire Eldar population. Psychers. And their weaponry and ability.
So they are usually all Eldar, like latent psychers? Like, do they all have an ability to be one? Because I know in, like, with humanity, it's not like every person has the ability to be a psyker. It's only a select few individuals. It's just like en masse of how many, like how big the Imperium is. That's where you get all these psychers from. But with the Eldar, it's like their population is diminished to such a degree that I'm assuming that most or all Eldar probably have some latent psyker abilities.
Tons of psychers across the entire Eldar population, and their weaponry and abilities are fast and extremely hard hitting, but of course rather fragile. Understanding an Eldar's brain is an exercise in futility. They are all over the place in confusion and trickery on a whole galactic scale. They fight weird, they think weirder, and Eldar in their own right really rely on this to keep their species alive. They need to think about deception and the strangeness of what they do if they truly want to not be immediately murdered and slaughtered wholesale thanks to their entirely small population. However, I must say that it seems like their population is getting slightly better. These craft worlds hold millions upon millions of people.
Oh, well, that answers that question, damn.
Continually, you know, reproduce and have their craft worlds expand.
So how big are those ships on scale then? Millions of people. That's gotta be fucking huge. Like what? Like we're talking like 50+ kilometer long ships or at least, right? And like maybe 100-kilometer long. Like how? What would be like an accurate representation of how fucking big one of those ships would look? You know what I mean? Like I it's very hard to put that in perspective. Like I'm looking at this picture right here. And I'm thinking, that's got to be like the size of like a fucking moon or something, right? Like straight up.
And as they continually, you know, reproduce and have their craft worlds expand, losing a few people in battle, while hurts a lot, they aren't really losing what's extremely precious to them. It's not like every single death means the death of their species. It seems like they're kind of on the upturn a little bit. They're still a doomed race being sucked into Slaanesh every time someone dies, but they are definitely doing a little bit better than they were before. Eldar are fast, cunning, and what they don't make up for in tankiness, they make up for in extremely advanced weaponry. They also call humans Monkai, which is something I mentioned earlier. That is a derogatory slur.
I could tell.
In the Warhammer world.
What the hell?
Why is it called Monkai? Well, it's because you can't, in your game, call people monkeys. On the tabletop, what I said. Not very tanky, generally pretty squishy, hit like trucks, and move at Mach 5. Fast,
those mechs, hold on, I want to go back to that. Those mechs look fucking sweet. And they got like drop ships and shit too. So that's all on the tabletop, eh? It's pretty fucking cool. Those mechs are sweet looking though. That looks like some like Pacific Rim level like mech, you know? I like the look of those.
Hit like trucks and move at Mach 5. Fast, hit hard, die fast. Exactly how it sounds. They've been good for a very long time, too. We bring only death and leave only carry on. It is a message even a human can understand.
Wow.
Eldar. So, Drukhari. Let's talk about the Dark Eldar.
On today's episode of How Fucked Up is Fucked Up. That's fucked up.
So those people I mentioned in the Webway, in the super deranged cults and the depraved people of the Eldar, in the Webway, they didn't quite get a hold onto them. Slaanesh like has them, but it has them on like by the pinky finger. And they're slowly being consumed by Slaanesh, but they found out they can stave her off by doing Slaanesh things. The Dark Eldar are by far the worst, most horrifying, disgusting, depraved, and brutal race in all of Warhammer 40k.
I'm just gonna put the worst.
Entirely a group of people whose full purpose to save their species from extinction, to go into planets, raid them, and take as many slaves as they possibly can,
Jesus.
to torture them for 1, 5, 10, 20, a million years, because that torture will keep them from dying. They look very BDSM style too. They definitely have a lot more spiky bits, and they have a lot more of that kind of leathery black look to them. But let's
can definitely see where the inspiration for this comes
from.
from.
Upstanding Imperial citizen living life on a regular planet. You get invaded by the Necrons. The Necrons will shoot you with a deatomizer, and you will be destroyed in a millisecond, and that's it. Not the worst way to go.
Honestly, no, that sounds pretty
Chaos
peaceful, at
Marines
least.
Or something. You take a bolter shot to the head or a chain sword across your stomach, and you get cut in half. Painful, but
quick.
not the worst.
Quick.
The orcs arrive. They beat you to death. Hurts, but, you know, whatever. Tyranids, they eat you alive. It's pretty rough.
That sounds pretty bad.
That
sounds fucking awful, actually.
The Dark Eldar. This is going to get a little graphic. I apologize.
Okay, here we go.
You die. You don't. You are instead taken as a human slave. Your life will be endless work and agony.
Oh my God.
24/7. They will make sure you can't not die, as your pain satisfies them. They will hook you up to all manner of torture devices. They will inject pain-based stimuli drugs directly into your nervous system. They will slowly run razor blades across your skin. They will fillet you and pull out your teeth and your fingernails one by one. They will remove your appendages and your skin and wait for it to grow back so they can do it again. They will murder and torture and use the R word, it rhymes with grape, your entire family in front of you. Do the exact same thing to them. You yourself will also be rhymes with grape anywhere and everywhere possible. And this will occur for 20 years until you are no longer satisfying to them.
Okay, yeah, I see what he means now. So, how many people, how big is the fandom surrounding the the Drakari? Dark Elves? Is that what they're called? Because goddamn, these guys sound very fucking bad. You know, these sound like the worst guys. I don't even think Chaos is that bad, honestly. And they're doing this. I can see, if this is staving off Chaos, if this is what's keeping them alive, I can understand, in a sense, why they're doing it, because they're looking at it for the species. This is what we gotta do. Well, there's not many of us left. We're doing what we gotta do. That being said, their means do definitely not justify their ends. They're fucked in my head, you know what I'm saying? At the point that you have to do all that just to sustain yourself as a species, fucking end your species at that point. You did this to yourselves, you know? That's just my hot take on it.
And this will occur for 20 years until you are no longer satisfying to them. And then you will be contorted, crushed, and twisted into some form of trophy. A fleshy trophy, or a ring, or a couch, or a TV stand.
Oh my God.
Or perhaps a wonderful hat. While you are, of course, still alive and breathing.
What the fuck?
And you will become a moaning, fleshy trophy for eternity.
That's fucked.
And that is what happens when you are taken by the Dark Eldar. They are the most depraved, most horrifying.
So I'm sure that it's at least within the Imperium, that it's it's better to take a lasgun, shot from yourself than it is to get captured by these guys. Because holy fuck, death seems much more preferable. I could see some anti-capture methods for sure if you're fighting these guys, because that sounds fucking awful.
Is what happens when you are taken by the Dark Eldar. They are the most depraved, most horrifying race in all of 40k. They look the part, and they do it so they all don't die. They are literally forced to do this,
that's the problem.
Slaanesh's grip will get harder, and they will have their souls pulled away. So long as they keep doing this, Slaanesh is like, you're doing good, man.
Yeah.
I'm solid.
All right.
You keep that
you
shit
keep
up,
it up.
you elf-eared bastards. That's the Dark Eldar. That's the Drakari. They are horrible. On the tabletop, they're actually kind of like Eldar, but more extreme. They are even squishier than the Eldar, but they hit generally even harder. Fast attacks, skirmishers, really quick, speedy, like get around them, do a lot of damage, get away kind of stuff. That's most of the Dark Eldar. Look up the definition of Grim Dark in a dictionary. You'll find a picture of the Dark Eldar. And Sev from Public Commando. From Mr. Vecht. We are the lords of despair, masters of terror. Dread and agony are our meat and wine, and they are plentiful indeed.
Yeah. Yikes.
Dark Eldar. Let's talk about the Harlequins. Clowns.
What's the matter, Andy?
Harlequins.
Don't you want to have some fun?
The Harlequins are a bizarre race of Eldar. They're demonic clown performers. They're like a weird mix of Sander Cohen from BioShock and Jin from League of Legends, but in a more clown theme. They're artists of death and perfecters of their craft. They do not belong to craft worlds or any of the weird Drukhari people. They guard something called the Black Library, which is this giant tome of never-ending knowledge deep in the heart of the Eldar webway, and also guarded by their god named Kegorok, I believe is how you pronounce his name. He is the laughing god. But it's the Eldar's laughing god, and these are the Harlequins, the Harlequin clowns. These are Eldar clowns, okay? So imagine the things that an Eldar, these depraved individuals would find funny.
Yeah.
And this is the god of that. It's a horror clown. These are gods of horror for us normal people. For them, they're like, oh, it's so funny.
That's just a typical jest.
Honk, honk. They're very bizarre and difficult to describe. They've escaped the ruinous powers of Slaanesh somehow, but their main thing is guarding that Black Library. And the Harlequins just... they're demon clown performers. They're barely any models on the tabletop.
Really?
They're good in melee. They're demon clowns. I'm not sure. I got
not much more to say.
It is too easy for an Eldar to embrace the obscene virtues of chaos. For Slaanesh is nothing more than a manifestation of the Eldar mind in its most wild and unconstrained form. Human morality is meaningless to the Eldar. And to the dark side of the Eldar mind, all life is to be expended at a whim. Cruelty and generosity are but the impulse of a moment. Beauty and sensuality are virtues that can be expressed in bloodshed just as easily as in song. To an unfettered Eldar mind, there is neither sanity nor madness, but merely a wave of perfect existence fulfilled by its own savage momentum. They're very strange. The Harlequins,
Drukhari, they sound like it.
They are an anomaly that make humans seem completely easy to understand in comparison. They range from rekindling their civilization to horrifying murder and also clowns. They're all over the place, but honestly, they represent quite well and are rather interesting, especially with the whole Slaanesh murdering everyone bit. So, yeah, Eldar. Now, bugs.
Ma, they following me, Ma.
Tyranids.
They following me.
Who's following you?
The bugs.
The bug.
The Tyranids. Now, you want to...
So from how you guys explained the Tyranids to me, the Tyranids are kind of like a big hive mind in a sense. And apparently they do have some like ability to access the warp. Like one of you guys explained it to me as if it was like a shadow under the waves kind of thing, as how like a psyker would view the Tyranids in the warp. My personal take on that is that if they are capable of entering, and I don't know, right? This is just my assumption, is that the Tyranids would in theory be the most powerful psyker race out there because it's a hive mind, right? Like a hive mind is going to be so much more infinitely fucking powerful than an individual could ever be. And an individual will never be able to link its brain together on such a scale as a hive mind just naturally has evolved to over billions of years. Like, my one question about the Tyranids, though, and I'm sure he'll answer, is are the Tyranids outright like a hive mind itself isn't evil? Like wasps aren't necessarily evil. Wasps are just wasps. They fucking do what they need to survive. You know what I'm saying? Like an anthill, it does what it needs to survive. It expands. It ruins its environment. Maybe it kills another anthill to get there, to expand, but it doesn't mean to, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I wonder if the Tyranids are a lot the same. I guess we'll see.
The bugs.
The bug.
The Tyranids. Now, you want to talk something a lot more fun, a little more simple than all this crazy Eldar shenanigans? Let's talk the Tyranids. They're bugs. Do they look like Zerg? Hell yeah, they look like Zerg. You want to know why they look like Zerg? Because they were actually supposed to be what Zerg were.
Really?
Apparently StarCraft was supposed to be a 40k game in the beginning.
Really?
That's why they look so much like Eldar, Zerg.
When you guys actually
Imperial
mentioned
Band.
that to me, I remember reading that in the
Space
comments. That's a
Marine-y.
sick
Those
feature.
Marines, huh? They look a little bit Space Marine-y to
Yeah,
me.
they do.
Maybe. I don't know. You really fucked up on that one, Games Workshop, didn't ya? Tyranids are a giant infestation of unfathomable proportions. These are giant, extremely bio-advanced hive mind organisms that are basically all about absorbing as much biomass as they possibly can to evolve and mutate to be extremely potent and powerful and kill and eat anything in their path. They are probably the least evil faction in all of 40k because
that's
all
what I was
they
gonna
want to
say.
do
Yeah.
is eat shit. They want to om nom nom the entire galaxy. They hangry and we food. Also, they want
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Like they inherently they're not bad. They're just a fucking hive mind that's evolved to such a point where they are just like so fucking destructive on a galactic scale, but they don't mean to, you know? They don't mean to fucking end races and eliminate empires. Like that's not their purpose, you know? It's a byproduct of them existing, you know? That's all it is.
want to om nom nom the entire galaxy. They hangry and we food. Also,
Truly.
this Tyranid hive mind has a presence in the warp. In fact, Tyranids in their own right have a massive presence in the warp.
Okay,
There's a thing
yeah.
called the shadow in the warp specifically.
Right,
Where when they're
okay.
coming in to invade a planet, they have this weird ability to kind of cut off the warp on all the psychers on that planet. And how
Really?
do you get help across the stars? Well, you need the warp because you need that for interstellar travel. So with people unable to call for help from the Tyranids, these are just easy pickings. And
Like,
an
yeah.
entire giant Tyranid hive fleet comes out of orbit and just will massacre, absorbing all that biomass and turning them and all of their other Tyranids into even more advanced monsters. They come in so many varieties too, all based on what is important. Tiny little ripper swarms for scouting and having little dudes eat people up, to the Hormigons, Termagants, and Gene Stealers, all the way to the Hive Guard and the Exocrines and the Swarm Lord, to Hive Tyrants and their giant battle fleets, and even something as crazy as the Hierophant Bio Titan.
What the
Tyranids
fuck?
come in all forms and sizes depending
That'd
on what
be
they
fucked to
require.
see.
They are extremely good at anti-biological weaponry. There is no way you can plague them or blight them. They have extremely strong armor, carapaces and such. Tyranids are nigh perfect organisms and are pretty spooky when it comes down to how they handle all of their genetic material. Keep feeding them, they'll keep evolving. They keep on creating new horrifying organisms to spread across the galaxy. And you want to know what the most terrifying part
That picture
of
looks
the Tyranids
fucking
is?
scary.
We might be surrounded. There have been like around 6
Really?
or 7 Tyranid hive fleets. Behemoth, Kronos, all these different kinds of hive fleets. And they've
the
all
fuck?
arrived in the galaxy from different points.
So do the Tyranids come from another galaxy in general? Are they not native to, like, I guess, the galaxy as we know it? Like, are they an external threat that's coming? Because that kind of implies that they've just wiped out other galaxies already, right? And they're literally just making their way to the next one, doing the same. Next one, do the same. Next one, do the same. So there, in theory, could be how many of these giant hive fleets out there. That's kind of cool. I
And
like
they've
that.
all arrived in the galaxy from different points.
Yeah.
Different sections of the Milky Way galaxy have had different Tyranids come through. And that is horrifying. Because as far as we know, we could just be surrounded on all sides by Tyranids. The only reason you may not hear a whole lot about Tyranids is because it's a little bit hard to have a bunch of story off of one hive mind genocidal monsters. All
Right.
these giant bugs swarming in, killing and eating everybody and evolving. Oh, I mean, as cool as there are, there's some cool characters, the Swarm Lord, Old One Eye. You can't really have a whole bunch of major character-based stories around them. As awesome as they are, they're simple. They want to eat you. They want to eat you and absorb your biomass. They are
Right.
simple bugs. If you want something a little more complex, Talk gene stealer cults.
I can have all the pot I want.
Gene
I get
stealer
around
cults.
faster than walking, and wherever I need a seat, I can just sit on my balls.
Gene stealer cults
That
are
was a
effective
crazy
brand
quote.
of Tyranid that can slowly infect themselves into different kinds of society. And by infecting them, they can rise up to where they all pray and believe in these regular humans, pray and believe into their Tyranid hive mind gods. And
Really?
these brood lords and I think they're called patriarchs all can turn an entire world all based into gene stealers, and these are called gene stealer cults. An entire hive world of the Imperium can be turned into nothing but servants of the Tyranid masters just by infecting them and screwing with their genetic code a little bit. They also have this cool like Mad Max look, which is really neat. They are definitely one of the bigger threats to the Imperium besides Chaos. I keep saying biggest threat to the Imperium. They're up there though.
There's many.
Dingus stepped on a bug in middle school. Asshole. There is a cancer eating at the Imperium. With each decade, it advances deeper, leaving drained, dead worlds in its wake. This horror, this abomination, has thought and purpose that functions on an unimaginable galactic scale. And all we can do is to try to stop the swarms of bioengineered monsters it unleashes upon us by instinct. We have given the horror a name to salvage our fears. We call it the Tyranid race. But if it is aware of us, it must know us as nothing but prey.
Exactly, yeah.
They're cool. But are they as cool as the orcs?
Before he gets into that, yeah, those gene stealer cults sound crazy. And like, that's not even like too far out there that like a hive mind would be able to make like an infiltrator unit. Like that idea has been toyed with by a couple different sci-fis, like Starship Troopers, for example, where it's like a fucking brain bug sucks out your brains, or they have infiltrator bugs that implant themselves in your brains and now control your body, know your thoughts, know what you're thinking. And while a hive mind might not be able to understand that, what it can understand is leadership, right? So all it really has to do is get to that one individual there, and suddenly everyone's on side. You know what I'm saying? And you guys explained it to me too, is like in the Astartes video, I guess that red cloak guy that he was with the Inquisition, like he has ultimate power. He can end worlds if he deems it fit. So the fact that one of those guys could get corrupted by Tyranids or by Chaos, whatever, right? You could definitely see where the threat could come in there. It's a very interesting concept, like subterfuge that way.
Screen's gone red. That means I'm super fast.
Orcs. I fucking love orcs.
Orcs.
So, yes. The
I think everybody loves orcs.
The green tide, the green skins. These orcs, they are in fact a race in 40k.
That's
the
awesome.
Orcs are as exactly what you expect them. They have archaic weapons, they're big boys, they have axes, and they have got big old teeth, and they want to kill everything, and there are so many of them. The only reason they haven't taken over the entire galaxy is they can't stop murdering each other. Orcs are so cool. Orcs don't have philosophy. Orcs don't have existential crisis. What matters is who's the biggest orc. You listen to that guy because he the biggest orc. He big orc. Big orc knows best. You win through the power of imagination. Of all the races I have found throughout the galaxy, the orc is the hardest to comprehend. They wage war with machines that should not work, and are looking for strategic gains,
what the fuck?
and are just as likely to slaughter each other as the enemy. How does one battle an enemy that defies all logic? As an orc, you're enjoying life. You're enjoying the life you're given. Your whole life and job and purpose is to get up and beat each other to death because you can. The biggest orc is the man who understands everything. He is the boss. And orcs have this really weird, like, big, dumb, stereotype British accent, which is just hilarious to me. Those are orcs. You fight. You like to fight. Your whole purpose is to fight. You wage war because
what are those?
You got your
those
boss
like
over
kamikazes.
there, and you better listen to the boss, because if you don't listen to the boss will squish you and make you an example for the other orcs, and then you can't fight because orc dead. And orc dead can't fight because orc dead. Orcs, they scrap together machines out of parts that don't.
That ship looks crazy. It's got like fucking teeth and shit on it too. That looks fucking wild. And it's just guns. It's guns fucking everywhere, protruding from every angle. Like, if you're gonna think of like orcs in space, that right there. Like literally that right there. You know?
Dead orcs. They scrap together machines out of parts that don't make any sense, and because they believe, they have the mental imagination
They want it to
that
work.
machine will run, it'll run. If that
Really?
machine's out of gas, you're driving that machine with your fellow orcs, and the biggest orc is behind the wheel, and you run out of gas, some orc behind you is like, oh, Zog, we're out of gas. And the big orc is like, no, we're not. I filled the fucking gas tank up earlier. And all the other orcs are like, oh yeah, you did do that. And then you turn the fucking mech back on, and it works again. Does it have gas? Probably not, but it works. The power of imagination. They paint things red because it makes them
What the
think it
fuck?
goes faster. They paint things purple because it's the sneakiest color. You want to know why? You ever seen a purple orc? Didn't fucking think so. Orcs are also like ancient
What
as
the
hell.
fuck?
They're back in the Eldari time frame. But back then they were called Krorks, and they were much larger and scarier and far more intelligent.
And one of you guys did tell me briefly about like how the orcs came to be. Allegedly, they were like much smarter, and they were they created by the Necrons? Was it? Basically as like a wonder weapon in a sense, but obviously when the war was lost, they like de-evolved is how it was explained to me. Like they basically just like lost that intelligence, lost that like size, and just became like orcs as we know them now.
Frame. But back then they were called Krorks, and they were much larger and scarier and far more intelligent. Now they're just orcs, and they're big, dumb, and they smack things, but they're pretty spooky. They're not very well armored, but they hit really hard, and it's called the Green Tide because there are so many orcs. There are about as many orcs as there are Tyranids, maybe more.
Really?
Who knows? But they keep on, murdering each other, so it's not too bad of an issue. Orcs
Okay.
are entirely comic relief. Their stuff is slapped together that makes no sense. Their vehicles don't work the way they're supposed to, but they work because they think
What the
it
hell?
works, because they imagine that it works. Orcs care only about who is the biggest orc, and they will follow the biggest orc. And then if they want to be the biggest orc, they'll challenge the biggest orc. And then when they go and they issue a wa is just war in orc, they
Okay.
murder everybody and everything in this giant tide of green orcs who are just excited to be hitting something. They don't care that they're hitting Eldar or the Imperium or Tau or anyone in between. They're just so they get
Holy
to beat
shit.
shit up. That's orcs. And on the tabletop, they are a total coin flip, and they're really fun. I have never met a salty orc player. I have never met someone who
That's
plays
great.
orcs and
That's
is
great to
ever
hear.
just a bad guy or that guy. Orc players have this kind of fun to them because when you play them, you are completely submitting yourself to RNG. So here's the thing. Guardsmen, Imperial Guardsmen, when they shoot, they roll a dice, and on a 4 up, they'll hit their target. They have a 50% chance. Space Marines, pretty good. They hit on a 3 or higher because they're
Okay.
well trained. Adeptus Custodians, they hit on 2s because they're just super well trained.
Okay.
Orcs, they hit on a 5 or higher. But if they roll a 6, they get to make another shot with anything. From
Okay.
the dinkiest pistol to the biggest rocket launcher. It doesn't matter.
What the
Half of their
fuck?
stuff will blow up on a whim. One of their medics, if you roll a 1 to heal someone, you fuck up your surgery and you just kill an orc. They're so wacky and silly. But the thing is if you roll well, you roll high, and you keep rolling high, you are going to crush people. And if you don't, you lose. I mean, that's what you get when you play orcs. That's what happens when you play orc. It's a coin flip.
Honestly,
Just one-
they sound like one of the more fun like tabletop factions to play as. I will say that. That definitely sounds like just a balls to the walls gameplay style, and I could definitely get behind that a lot.
you get when you play orcs. That's what happens when you play orc. It's a coin flip, which is why you can't be a salty bitch when you play orcs, because things won't go your way. It's just the roll of the dice. You're playing a dice game. But if you're gonna have fun and you want to be stupid and you want to be silly, you're gonna play some damn orcs.
Yeah.
But on the opposite side of the fun part of this, let's talk about the Necrons.
Oh yeah.
The Necrons are
Fuck,
spooky, scary
bring that beat
skeletons
back.
and very grimdark again. They have a much more fleshed out lore than before. Back in the day, they were just undead Egyptian space terminators, and they still looked that
Fair
way,
enough.
but now they actually have a story. So way back in the day, you had the Necron tier. Kind of see a theme here: Eldari, Eldar, Krork, Orc, Necron, Necron tier. So the
Okay.
Necron tier were this race of generally kind of shitty people. Not because they were personally shitty, because their lives were awful. They were ill-fated
Really?
to a horrible existence of like radiation and a terrible planet they lived on, and everything just really sucked. Being a Necron tier was just really depressing. They
Sounds
really
like it.
were looking for immortality. They were extremely reliant on the hope that they would eventually find the key to living forever and to stave off this horrible nature that they were thrust upon them, and therefore they could become the most dominant race in the galaxy. And they found this group. They're called the Old Ones. Imagine them kind of like the Forerunners
Okay.
in Halo
Those were briefly
or
mentioned
Xel'Naga
before.
in StarCraft, right? These Old Ones were these strong, pretty much omnipotent beings, and they, of course, knew the key to immortality. So the Necrons went to them and
Right.
said, please, show us your ways. And the Old Ones said, piss off. Not really, they were a lot more
Pretty
humble
much.
about it, but they did not want to share their secret of immortality with the Necrons. The Necrons, of course, took this very well and waged war with them.
Of
Kind
course.
of under this united banner. The Necron different dynasties didn't really like each other, but under this one man, the Silent King, he thought the best way to unite his race was to do this giant war with the Old Ones out of spite for them keeping the secret of immortality to them. This was known as the War in Heaven, and this is actually like a
Okay. Yeah, he's touched on this before. So this is the war in heaven. This is like the big fucking. This is the big one. You know, this is the big one. This is kind of what popped it off. Okay.
This was known as the War in Heaven, and this is actually like a multi-stage war, because during this War in Heaven, they discovered the Star Gods, a whole new race of people known as the Catan, or the Catan.
The Catan.
These Star Gods
One of you
were
mentioned those
also
to me,
very much
too.
like Old Ones, almost omnipotent
Okay.
beings, and they too had the key to immortality. And so the Necrons went to them and said, hey, can you help us fight off the Old Ones? Can you help us kill these Old Ones, you, the Catan? And the Catan said yes. And in fact, we can help provide you with the immortality you so desperately seek. So the Silent King of the Necrons decided to make a pact with the Catan to allow them to accept this generous gift of immortality upon them. But this, of course, had been a horrendous trap, and the Necrons were dragged in chains to this biotransference where their flesh was stripped from them, replaced with nothing but a metal hollow shell, as their souls were ripped from their body and fed to the Catan. And the Catan fattened up. They got chonk on the souls of the Necrons.
Wow.
As this was their plan all along, they consumed the flesh and souls of the Necron tier and turned them all into unwilling robotic slaves just to serve their will. And then with their new-founded Necron army, they pointed their guns at the Old Ones, and the Catan continued their domination of the stars and their genocide, complete and full genocide of these Old Ones. The Old Ones did their best to stave it off. They even created other races, the Eldari and the Orcs, to try to fight off the horrifying Necron
When you guys
army
mentioned
and
that
the
to me,
Catan above them.
they
But
created
there
the
was
Orcs. I didn't know they created the
absolutely no
Eldari.
possible chance for them. And the Old Ones were absolutely extinguished across the galaxy. Their entire race completely removed. Full on 100% genocide. However, during all this, the Catan, so just infatuated with their victory, started fighting each other for fun, for sport, and for small differences, doesn't matter. The Catan, with these overpowered people, they're going to eventually hit each other at some point.
Right.
And as they began just menially fighting each other, the Eldari and the Orcs actually started pushing on the C'tan's borders a little bit, giving them a little bit of a run for their money. And as this continued, this is when the Silent King, who retained his consciousness, decided to leap into action and start a full-scale revolt against their C'tan masters.
Okay,
and this
so they rose
revolt
up.
was bloody as the entire Necron army was surged off to destroy these star gods. They were able to, just after suffering horrendous losses, were able to turn the tide of the war. And they took these C'tan and they blasted them, because as these star gods are unkillable, they were able to break them into thousands of shards and entrap them in giant stasis vaults to now actually be slaves to the Necrons. And with the Necrons having the entirety of their old gods enslaved to them, they realized that soon their race was about to be attacked by the overcoming new races, the Eldari and the Krorks. And so what they did is they retreated into giant stasis tombs in order to preserve their energy and their strength for when one day they would be reawakened and they would be able to rule the galaxy that was rightfully theirs. And then some dingus Adeptus Mechanicus guy diddled with a green console, and now the Necrons are back and they see all these primitive races on their lawns and they think, get the fuck off of it. The Necrons are back, super advanced.
So I can definitely see where like the whole like Tomb King fucking comparison is made. I have played the Total War Warhammer game, the fantasy version, and I can see the correspondence between them and the Tomb Kings now. One of you guys pointed that out to me. That makes a lot of sense. They seal themselves in vaults, and even like they're stylized kind of like the Tomb Kings in a sense. I think that's pretty cool. That's but so what was the story of this dude who went on and fucking like opened up this vault? Did he just see this vault and he's like, let's go check this out, you know? I'm assuming they didn't know what it was at the time, but it's like, bro, come on. You know, if you don't know what it is, it's probably nothing good kind of thing.
Fuck off of it. The Necrons are back, super advanced, and they are here to reclaim the galaxy that they so rightfully believe is theirs. Now, at tabletop, they're a lot like that. Tons of undead Egyptian skeleton robots. When they die, they just get right back up because they keep on reanimating. Hard to kill. Tons of crazy stuff. You can use the C'tan themselves as units to fight with. It's pretty cool. The Necrons are one of the three major events in 40k. The Horus Heresy, the Fall of the Eldar, and the Awakening of the Necrons are all pretty substantial events. And the Necrons themselves are pretty dang cool as well. Here's a good quote.
What year did the Necrons wake up in?
Lucky creatures, as long last you have found the tranquility of death. I was like you once, clinging to life and blind to the truth. When I uncovered the truth, I too shuddered and paled with fear. Deep in these catacombs, I was remade. Here, my brethren slumbered for eons while the living grew like weed. My Lord knew this day would come. He had plans for us all. We would purge this world once more. So come, poor victims of life. We will grant you tranquility in these crypts. Kronos will be a tomb world once more. Necrons are also pretty smug. Trazen the Infinite especially, a little dickhead. But speaking of dickheads, last race, let's talk the Tau.
Tau. Okay.
The exact formation of the Tau Empire is not entirely understood. However, a long time ago, many thousands of years ago, in the 40k world that is, some Imperial navigation vessels were going around through different areas, and they saw a primitive race, blue people, smacking each other with sticks and stones. They thought, dumb Xenos race shit, and they bailed. Then this giant warp storm occurred right in that major area, unable to be breached. Then, once that warp storm 6,000 years later subsided, hello, those little sticks. Well, they decided to actually have no war of any kind and all just unite together under one flag of the Tau Empire. And now they have gigantic starships and Gundam robots and lasers and railguns and mechs, and they are here to ruin your day for the greater good. That is generally the Tau Empire. They have this kind of feeling of this.
So it's interesting. So they actually just didn't fight each other for 6,000 years. You gotta, like, that's an interesting concept to think, like, how much further as a species would we be if we weren't just so focused on fucking killing each other all the goddamn time? You know what I'm saying? If we actually focused our efforts to things that mattered as opposed to weapons of war amongst ourselves, you know, that's a very interesting concept that's played with, because they literally just showed up, saw them, they're like, oh yeah, these are filthy Xenos, you know, fucking playing with sticks, and yeah, like instantly they're back and they're better than ever.
Good. That is generally the Tau Empire. They have this kind of feeling of this homogenous group. All species can go underneath the banner of the greater good. The greater good is their idea of the fundamental increase and help of all. In fact, they are most likely the most like the Covenant in Halo, where they have the overarching prophets, being the ethereals, who are actually kind of dicks and like to pull at strings a little bit. Right. They have all these different races directly underneath them, and they all work together in this big group as this large, foreboding race that tries to spread their weirdly pseudo-religious influence across the galaxy. The alien is not intrinsically evil. Do not hate him. Pity his ignorance. Seek to understand his differences and equate him with his inadequacies. Only then will he accept his place in the greater good. That is generally the Tau. And if you're kind of wondering like what they
sound pretty good, to be honest.
Well, they're all about big robots and mechs. They have laser
like, I gotta say, out of every race that I've heard so far, these ones sound, even though like, yeah, their leadership might be dicks, in general, like, they're not xenophobic. They're open to allowing other races to live within them. They just ask that you conform to their way. But they're not gonna just fucking outright annihilate you just because you exist. You know what I'm saying? Like, in the grand scheme of things, they honestly seem like one of the friendliest races in this universe. I could be wrong. Maybe there's reasons why they're fucking a lot more devious than it lets on, but like right now, at least, my assumption is they're the better ones.
Well, they're all about big robots and mechs. They have laser rifles and rail guns. They got giant mechs with tons of missile pods and heavy rail rifles and rail guns and burst cannons and ion accelerators and void shields and all this stuff. And that is generally what the Tau's all about. But you're probably thinking, Bricky, this doesn't sound that evil. This doesn't sound very grim, dark Warhammer.
That's what I'm saying.
And you'd be right. The Tau Empire really don't have that much of a horrifying, grim, dark style like everybody else. They're much more younger, new age thing. In fact, they're probably a lot less evil and a lot even better than they are now back in the day, because they liked having like that good guy faction. But a lot of us who really like the dark, depressing style of Warhammer didn't really like it that much. So, see, the Tau get a lot of hate, and a lot of that hate isn't necessarily unjustified. It's mainly from a tabletop perspective, but as you can see from all the visuals I've shown you recently, they don't really fit in the 40k universe very well. They lack that super
they don't have the
dark,
style,
dramatic, kind of high gothic level the Imperium has. They don't have the weird kind of like grungy stuff that Chaos or say the Orcs do. And the Necrons and the Eldar have their own specific style as well. The Tau really do look like something out of Gundam. And while it isn't necessarily a bad thing, it does definitely not fit too well. There's that. There's also the tabletop problem. In tabletop, Tau are horrible.
So my take as somebody that's just looking at it, honestly, I kind of like the variation of it, to be honest with you, because like, as he says, I interpret it as that these other races, especially the Imperium Man, they're only looking this way, they're only acting this way on a society level because that they have existed for multiple thousands of years, right? Like tens of thousands of years at this point, right? The Tau, as he explains them, are a very, very new race. Why would they have any of that aesthetic that has been in this universe for thousands of years, when they were trapped in their own, like, I guess, section of space and not able to see anything else? Why would they have, you know, they had no outside influence in a sense, so why would they look anything like it? Like, I like the variation. I think it makes sense, to be honest with you. I mean, maybe that's a hot take, but, you know.
There's that.
I don't think they look bad.
Tabletop problem.
Let's see what he has to say about the tabletop, though. I don't know.
Horrible at melee combat, but exceptionally good at range combat. So they blast everyone from really, really far away, and they have a million rules to make it so that it's nearly impossible for you to get into melee combat. So it basically just forces you to bottleneck the game into one specific gameplay style, which is gun to gun. And if you're doing gun to gun, they're going to win every time because they're the Tau, and the Tau are really damn good at shooting. So it's one of those things that make the Tau generally rather hated, and a lot of different reasons for that, both from style and such. But this is actually
I could understand
one
the
of things I
tabletop
wanted to
perspective
end this
if
video
they're overpowered
with,
in a sense.
is that the Tau, while they have their issues, you should not be discouraged from playing them. I'll make plenty of Tau weeaboo jokes, of course I will, but it's all generally in good fun. Anyone who legitimately doesn't want you to play a faction is an idiot, and you shouldn't be giving them the time of day. You pick what you think is cool and what
That's a good take on it.
Like. In Warhammer, especially now, factions get better and they get worse. They grow and then they fall. You should only be playing what you think is cool. You like the look, you like the models. If you're talking tabletop, that is what you should be going for every time, is what you think is badass, because things change all the time. But the universe of Warhammer has so much going for it. Every faction has something interesting. Every character has a story, and there's a million stories to be told. The universe is vast and exciting, and while it is dark, depressing, and horrible, that is the damn charm. And out of everything I've told you in these two videos, if anything that you could take away is the reason why so many of us are so into this series and why we like it so much. Because with so much variety, such an expansive universe, and so much that can be done, you can find yourself having a pretty great time. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it has been informative.
That's a good perspective on it.
If you'd like to see more of me, Bricky, you have twitch.tv/Bricky for my streams. You have my merchandise site.
Go check him out.
I'm wearing all of my merch, but underneath this, because I had to wear this so it wasn't black or white for the green screen, which is a little unfortunate, but it's fine. If you'd like to see merch, it is in the description. Also, if you'd like to support me on my Patreon page at patreon.com/Bricky for more videos like this, then that would also be wonderful. So Twitch, merch, Patreon.
Go check out his Twitch and his Patreon, guys. He puts a lot of work into these videos.
I'm just stoked you got all the way to the end of the video, and that is enough for me. So we're going to be having some more content like this out in the future. Thank you so much for sticking around this long and being with me through this pretty rough time. That's, I think, all I got. Also,
awesome.
Before I go, let me leave you with my favorite Warhammer quote.
Okay.
He who scoffs at the power of the las gun has never ran through a field of 1,000 of them.
True.
Bye-bye.
Oh. Well, yeah, that was every single Warhammer Faction Explained Part 2 by Bricky, and I gotta say, another fucking great video, as usual, by Bricky there. Very in-depth, very informative, letting you know, the basic fundamentals, and then you can go and search yourself, what you like. And I think that's, I think it's a great starter pack video, or videos, I should say. Especially as somebody who's never really looked into it before. I think he did a really phenomenal job on touching on all the bases there, and just letting you know a little bit about, just so you can get your foot wet, and just so you can go check it out on your own. And that's really what it's about. And obviously I wouldn't, again, know about him or any of these videos without recommendations from you guys. So again, big thank you to everyone who left a recommendation, told me to go check out Bricky's videos, and has any other recommendations to leave for me there. I will be checking out Helsreach very, very soon. I'm looking forward to that so much, as well as that secret level episode by, well, I guess the Warhammer secret level episode, I should say. Again, Warhammer content is not going to be the only type of content I make, but again, you guys got me fucking interested right now. I'm really liking this so far, and again, the hype train for Helsreach is real. I'm not gonna lie. You guys suggested that. It looks fucking cool. I'm ready for that. And now that I have a fundamental knowledge, a basic knowledge at least, we can get right into that. So that'll be coming in the next few days here, all right? I appreciate you guys for watching. If you liked, please leave a like, leave a subscribe to see more content from me, and let me know what I should react to next. I really appreciate all the support on these videos, and I appreciate you guys coming along for the ride. And yeah, without any more talking, I guess this has been Centurion, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace, guys.